Hello chess friends and welcome to Azad of Chess channel and welcome to a spectacular game from the Norway Chess tournament in 2024 that's going on now in the beautiful town of Stavanger in Norway. So in this tournament we have 6 players. They will play a double round robin of 5 rounds, so we'll see 10 rounds of beautiful classical time format chess. Magnus Carlsen is here, Praggnanandhaa, Liren. We have here Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja will battle it out for the throne of this amazing chess tournament. And the cool part is that actually if the players play draw in the classical time format game, then they have to play an additional Armageddon game in which white has 10 minutes on the clock and black has 7 minutes on the clock. Of course white needs now to win the game. And in the first 2 rounds actually the tournament was a little bit boring. We had only drawish games in the first 2 rounds of classical time format chess, but Magnus Carlsen was the only player who won both of his Armageddon games, and before this round 3 Magnus Carlsen was in the lead of this thrilling, really beautiful chess tournament. So let's see now what happened. Praggnanandhaa versus Magnus Carlsen. I think now this was the derby of the day. This was really epic chess game between these two really spectacular masters. So with the white pieces, Pragg opened with the move e4. Magnus' response was c5, the Sicilian. We have knight to f3, e6, the French Sicilian, d4, c takes d4, the open Sicilian, and now after move a6 we have now the so-called con Sicilian, not allowing knight to b5 and for instance knight to d6 to happen here for white. So we have here bishop to d3, modern stuff here by Praggnanandhaa. We have queen to c7 by Magnus, the normal move in the con Sicilian, and now we have Carlsen, knight to f6, and now queen to e2, supporting simply the pawn on e4, and now of course trying to push the pawn to e5. We have now d6 by Magnus. Magnus of course anticipates the possibility of d6 and controls with both of these flexible pawns on d6 and e6 really the beautiful 5th rank. We have now c4. Pragg builds now the so-called Maroczy bind structure, is controlling really in a good way the d5 square. It's really unpleasant sometimes to play against these types of structures because sometimes you want to break also with ideas like b5, but this square is really taken. So very tough positional play now for both sides. We have knight from b to d7 by Magnus, knight to c3 by Pragg, knight to e5, hitting the bishop on d3. And actually when you think about it harder, okay, you can go for the bishop, but actually when we think about good pieces and or bad pieces by white, the bishop on d3 is so far holding the center, but it's actually not the optimal piece. It's really blocked out by its own pawn structure. So that's why Pragg plays, I think, the correct choice here. He plays first of all h3, wants to play f4, anticipates also the possibility of knight to g4 by one of those knights here on f6, on also on e5, and he's preparing f4. He wants now to get rid of this powerful knight by Magnus Carlsen here on e5, and he's risking to give up even his bishop pair for this kind of stuff. So here after move b6, Pragg goes immediately with f4, says okay, you can get my bishop on d3, but it was not really the optimal piece anyway. Very good so far opening by Praggnanandhaa. Queen takes d3. Still I would say it's an equal game because black has of course the bishop pair, which could be useful in the long term, but of course white has so far the space advantage in the center of the board, has now the powerful knight on d4, has already secured the king by Carlsen. So so far Praggnanandhaa played really a fast development. We have bishop to b7, which is a theoretical novelty but nothing spectacular. I would say it's not like something dramatically changed because now Magnus played bishop to b7 in one game that I found in the database. For instance, bishop to e7 has been played, but okay, good choice of course also to play bishop to b7. Now Pragg goes immediately with the aggressive f5, and believe me or not, in move 13 already Magnus Carlsen doesn't react correctly. It was really a surprise for me to see that usually Magnus is a great theoretician. He knows so much stuff about any opening. He knows so much theory. He's a great endgame player. He's a great strategic player, and he already makes a mistake with the move queen to d7. He leaves now the attack on the c file. Simply he's protecting of course further the e6 square, but Magnus Carlsen had here I think a better opportunity to immediately play e5. Seems of course a little bit strange that you would leave maybe here the d5 unprotected, but actually you have counterplay with rook to c8. Now you're attacking the c4 weakness and you're forcing now the move knight to e3, and when the knight is on d3, so far you're protecting of course the c4 pawn. Notice that the knight on e3 is standing in the way of the dark square bishop. The bishop on c1 is not a good piece anymore, so that's the issue. For instance, queen to c5 can be played, and you're not even allowing here the knight to move, at least for a while. At least you have solved so far some positional problems. But after move queen to d7 that Magnus played, as I said, he left now simply the protection or the attack on the c file. Simply he didn't push the position further. Pragg plays now a beautiful bishop to g5. Notice in the previous line the knight had to move on e3 and the bishop was stuck on the starting square c1. Now Pragg is battling simply here in a good way, attacks now the knight and is threatening simply bishop takes f6. If you take g takes f6, then you have a messed up pawn structure, because if you castle kingside, then with this messed up pawn structure, it's a tough quest and somehow to secure the king of castle. On the queen side, if you castle, it's a suicide anyway because of these weaknesses and here all over the board. So that's why Magnus already made a huge opening mistake, allowed here Praggnanandhaa really to spread his wings. So after bishop to g5, bishop to e7, Pragg simply continues, including now simply all the pieces in the attack. Really principled play. All of the pieces have played so far. Now we're including the other pieces that have not played so far in the game. Of course, we try maybe rook to e1. We're trying maybe to break and enter d6. Could be weak. Maybe for instance, if we take the knight on f6, then this could be weakness. So very bad so far opening here by Magnus Carlsen. And rook to c8. Okay, you're attacking now the c file, but it was previously much more dangerous if Magnus Carlsen would have of course played previously queen to c7 and rook to c8. Then the c4 pawn would be very weakness in white's position. But Pragg simply continues with queen to e2. He's saying if something clears on the e file, then your king is endangered here. So that's why e5. Magnus locks now the position, but now Magnus is playing the moves that he actually should have played previously. Now e5 is not such a good move, because now Pragg can get rid of the key defender of the d5 square. It's of course the knight. Because you push the pawn on e5, there is now this massive hole in black's position, and from this point on I think the game becomes very a one-way ticket here in white's favor. After bishop to f6, Pragg continues with knight to c2. Notice now the pawn is protected, and now we're trying to reroute both of this knight and now build simply a compact position around the square d5. Really nice strategic play by Pragg. Now Magnus does again the move that he should have played previously, queen to c6. Now he is attacking the c file, but Pragg simply protects it. But he has now the difference, of course, the bishop is out. The bishop got traded out for the knight on f6, and the knight is not protecting anymore the weak d5 square. Magnus continues with bishop to g5. We have now beautiful move here by Pragg, king to h1. Beautiful calm move. For instance, even if you try here something like knight to d5 would have been also possible for Pragg. Maybe even allow here Magnus Carlsen to take, but now you attack the bishop, you retreat, king to h2, for instance bishop to d5. And even in this scenario, although you lost a pawn, the knight on d5 would be actually much more powerful than the stuck bishop on f6, because the bishop is always paralyzed, neutralized by its own pawn structure. It's simply, like we call it, a big pawn. So but Pragg played, I think here, brilliant move, king to h1, calm move, allowing here even Magnus Carlsen to play bishop to e3, queen takes e3, and now Magnus had to actually play the move f6. If Magnus would not have played the move queen f6, if he would have taken the pawn on c4, then f6 by black is, I think, strategically lost game here from Magnus. For instance, you're trying g6, look at this, b6 weak, d6 weak. You cannot castle because you get queen to h6 here. Sorry, you can get if you castle here the queen on h6, and you could get checkmated very easily. So messed up really position. So that's why after queen to e3, Magnus could not take the pawn on c4. He played now first of all the move f6. Pragg continues with b3. Magnus of course continues the pressure on the c file by pushing the pawn to b5. But again, let's remember how Magnus had maybe 10 moves ago the possibility to build a c file attack anyway. Now it's a little bit too late, because Pragg again plays the solid knight to d5, and he's not allowing here Magnus Carlsen to breathe. Because what should you do? Even if you try b takes c4, this wasn't played in the game, but let's see now this obvious solutions. Then with queen to f3, you're trying maybe to push the pawn, rook to d3, even queen to h5 is possible. You cannot really castle here because you're running into knight to e7, the royal fork. So Black's king is stuck in the center. That's the issue here. Trying maybe c2, we simply attack and we will get our pawn back somehow in the next couple of moves. Maybe not immediately, but this pawn on c2 will fall. And as I said, you cannot castle. That's the issue. You're running into many fork ideas. Queen to h5, very dangerous. There's simply no good square anymore for the king. Very, very wild stuff. So after knight to d5, Magnus tried now to simplify the game by trading off the queens, which really makes sense. But of course, Pragg is not allowing that. He plays now queen to f3. Even if you castle now again, then you get here the fork against the king and the rook again. It would be game over. So Magnus continued with bishop to c4, but Pragg plays now the correct choice, queen to h5. Here Pragg does the really, really correct thing. He doesn't count material. He knows that Black's king is exposed, that this knight is too powerful on d5. Magnus had now to play the strange king to f8, and look at this. There's simply no good connection between these two rooks now. Magnus will fall if, for instance, one file opens. Then of course white can control this this back rank, cannot of course attack the 7th rank. In this scenario, it's almost like now Magnus Carlsen is playing without the whole rook. It's like Praggnanandhaa has an extra rook now till the end of the game, which is, I think, completely busted position here for Magnus Carlsen. Rook to f3, good move again by Pragg. He's now trying to somehow connect both of these rooks and attack now simply the c file. Bishop to d5, rook takes d5, the queen has to stop back, and now we have b takes c4, rook to c4, and now Pragg uses, of course, the only open file, the second, pardon me, open file, and is trying now to destroy Magnus Carlsen on the back rank. As I said, it's almost like Magnus is playing now without the whole rook. Rook to b4, Magnus is trying to hold the position, but now a rook to d3. Good move again by Pragg. The only way maybe to somehow prolong the game and somehow try to defend is to play a5, but still I think king to h2, calm move. Then you're trying to include the rook into the game, but then you play rook to c3. You're simply changing the open file again. I think Magnus would be destroyed simply by this beautiful heavy rook artillery here, by this beautiful rook activity. So after rook to d3, Magnus played now rook takes d3, which is even rook takes b3, pardon me, which is even worse. Of course, rook takes b3 is coming in. There's simply no good way anymore to defend the back rank. Queen to c7, must move here for Magnus. Queen to d1, trying of course to include now the queen into the game. Notice again, the rook is out of game. We have g6. Magnus is desperately trying somehow to secure the king, but of course queen to b1, not allowing Magnus Carlsen to get here on the 7th rank with the king, because then you're running into rook to b7. Queen to c5 by Magnus. Now rook to b7. The rook is still paralyzed. We have g takes f5, king to h2. A beautiful calm move. With this move, Praggnanandhaa saying you don't have anything. You can grab all of your pawns, but now my queen is coming to the square b3 into the attack, and from this point on, I think it's game over. Whatever you do, for instance, the checkmate threat is obvious. Magnus again tried to battle with the d5, but now Praggnanandhaa simply took, and in this particular position, Magnus Carlsen resigned. Maybe even rook to b8 is perfectly fine. Then you're trying something like this, you get a check, and the rook can be taken, also game over. But as I said, after rook to h7 in this position, Magnus Carlsen resigned. There's now this threat here, queen to b8, and whatever you do, it's simply a messed up game here. So, pooh. Great win for Pragg. Great attack. We have to say it. Magnus messed up the opening too much. He played carelessly this queen to d7. I'm not saying that this win by Praggnanandhaa is not deserved or something. This was epic, perfect play by Praggnanandhaa. But why Magnus did such a mistake? I'm sure he knows the theory. Maybe he played too fast. I'm not sure, but this was really epic how Praggnanandhaa didn't allow him here to breathe, to get the pieces into the game. Really spectacular, active, sharp, and also beautiful strategic play here by the young Indian. Really deserved one here for Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. With this win, Praggnanandhaa Praggnanandhaa is now back in the tournament. He has now great chances, maybe even to win this event, but it's not over. Of course, we'll see 10 rounds. So far, we're in the round 3. Everyone will play one game with the white pieces, one game with the black pieces, so that's why still nothing is over. We know how Magnus can get everything in the last couple of rounds, but if he plays like this, then I don't think he has to search anything in this amazing chess tournament. So, okay, if you like this game, you can also check out my other content here on my YouTube chess channel. We have here some commented chess games, but also some commented chess games played by computers. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.